everybody, Bob Mehsikomer here. We got a great show lined up for you tonight. Hey, we're going to take a couple of words here from the people who make it possible and we'll be right back into the meat of what's going on. You don't want to miss tonight's show. It is really going to be fun. Hi everyone, Bob Mehsikomer here. Don't let your lack of success be the death of your fishing. Check out Grim Reaper Lures, spinnerbaits, and bucktails. Call them at 610-593-2492 or look them up on the internet at grimreaperlures.com. Hi everyone, Bob Mehsikomer here. Hey, got a question. What's the hottest thing in your boat during prime musky conditions? If you're like me, it's Grant Big Dog Rods. Talk to the big dog himself. Call him at 847-577-0848. You know something, folks? When I started out many years ago, my ma took me fishing. My dad did too. But my ma was the one that really took me fishing. Ma would come home from work and we would get in the car, her and I, nobody else wanted to go, and Ma and I would go sit on the shores of ponds and catch fish. And man, I'm telling you, those are days I remember as if they were happening yesterday. And when I set out and started fishing, I had no dreams, no aspirations whatsoever of wanting to be a professional fisherman. It wasn't in my wheelhouse, if you will. As I went on, I decided, hey, I like this stuff. I tournament fished and was actually pretty good at it and thought, you know, this is kind of cool. But again, I never thought that 40 years of my adult life would be consumed fishing, teaching other people how to do it and stuff. It's just amazing. So it really has been kind of cool. You can find me, folks, a number of different ways. On Instagram at Simply Fishing TV and on Twitter, Bob, lowercase Mehsikomer. That'll help you find us, know what we're doing, and keep in touch with what's going on. That being said, one of the biggest things that we've got going right now in the streaming world is live, and that's what we're doing here tonight. We're streaming live. We've got guests lined up. We've got some interesting conversations ahead, but before we get there, it's the post world after the live streaming that's important. And the reason I say that, folks, is because we do a lot over on our YouTube channel, okay? Our YouTube channel is something that we probably don't spend nearly enough time campaigning. We just let it go. That's the intro to our YouTube page, folks. You go over to our YouTube page, just go to Bob Mehsikomer on YouTube. You'll find it. You can type in Simply Fishing and find it. It's not hard to find it. So the truth of the matter is we have videos on there that have got over 500,000 views. And then we've got videos on there that don't seem to be moving at all. Now, it's not because of content. It's because I don't drive this message every day of the week. A lot of people have got a hold of me and say, you really need to let people know what you do. That way, they can go enjoy it. So YouTube is one of those ways to do it after the fact. You can choose playlists and figure out exactly what you want to view. You can watch portions of it. It'll retain where you start and stop. And when that's all said and done, well, you're right back at it and you're out doing your own thing. I mean, that's the cat's meow. So if you would, just take a few minutes, folks, and slide over to YouTube and catch up on shows that you might have been missing, catch up on some of the stuff that we've got. I have over 200 programs up on YouTube. That's a lot of material, folks. I shot over 700 television shows in my career, and a lot of them are on formats that, quite frankly, will never be seen. Fact is, I'll say this. If anybody that's listening out there knows that they can convert 1-inch broadcast masters over to the digital format, by all means, get a hold of me, because that's what we want to do. We're just not in a position to be able to do it. So that being said, let's pull up our first guest of the night. He is on the phone with us right now. He comes to us from the state of Washington. Rodney Minette. Rodney, you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Bob.
Hey, thank you, young man. Now, I spoke last week about teaching or talking about young people in the industry and how important that is, and not doing it as lip service. Just it's real. You have to be aware that if we're going to have a fishery going further in the future, an industry and a fishery, we need young people that are aspiring, that are interested, talented, and want to be involved in it. And I think I found one of those people in Rodney. Rodney, give me a little backdrop on you.
Okay. Well, I'm 16. I've been fishing probably since I could walk. We moved to this one area where we live now. It's got a private lake, and I go down there almost every day, and I go fish that to get better, learn stuff, learn new techniques. Because my aspiration is that I could turn fishing into a career someday.
And that's a good one. That's certainly a good aspiration. I would be proud of that one.
Yeah, I look up to people like Scott Martin, those big timers that have made it to that point where they can fish and successfully make a living off of it.
You know, they didn't do it without a lot of effort, okay? It just doesn't happen. You have to put a lot of energy in. Now, you're talking about tournament fishermen in that case.
Yeah.
If we break down the industry and try to understand the best way to get into one of those is tournament fishing, okay? But tournament fishing is one of those deals where you're going to invest a lot. When you start traveling and start fishing tournaments in other waters that you're not your everyday water, your world's going to change, and you're going to find out that fish have idiosyncrasies that you're not aware of. Now, yes, a bass is a bass is a bass, a muskie's a muskie's a muskie, so on and so forth. But the truth of the matter is those fish don't necessarily all beat to the same rhythm in every system. So when you go from lake to lake, chances are pretty good you're going to have to learn new things as you do it. So that's one perspective. The other is the industry itself, you know, being a rep for a major company, a major brand, maybe start out with a smaller brand and then move forward into a bigger brand. Is that something that might be of interest to you?
Yeah, I would like to go. I would like to travel the world to just fish. Learn new techniques, like I said, fishing for different bass, because not every bass eats the same. Not every bass goes after the same things, and one lake could be completely different than another lake. It could be the same time of year.
Correct. Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about what you like to do, okay? Because I see you here with a picture. Is this your younger brother that you're photographed with here?
Yes, that is my younger brother.
Okay. Did he whoop up on you because you beat him with that fish? You got a bigger fish, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, nah. He likes fishing, but doesn't quite understand the techniques yet, which, you know, trying to teach the younger generation, because that's the future of fishing.
You hit it right on the head. You zeroed right in on it. You know, we did, like I said, we did a show last week where we talked about young inspirational fishermen before we got into the meat of what we were going on. And I was watching the numbers as the week went on, and I was a bit concerned that we had an angling society out there that just wasn't involved enough to listen to what young people have to say and how they aspire to being in the industry. And then as the week went on, those numbers, well, they ballooned, and our numbers were really good. So I guess there's just a slower audience to get to that side of everybody. So everybody wants the hoorah, and young people don't have the hoorah yet. They're not there. You may someday be one of those Scott Martins. You may be a Paul Elias. You may be a Ricky Clunn or a Denny Brower. You never know. I mean, it's something that could very easily happen. No question about it. Yep, absolutely. Where are we?
Yeah.
Where are we fishing right now? You told me you were out on the water right now. Where are we fishing right now? You're in Washington, right?
Yes, we're on a lake called Newman Lake fishing right now as we speak. I may have forgot a little bit about 215 because I got caught up in fishing and stuff, so I stayed around a little longer. I got kind of caught up.
That's all right. Not a problem with it. We're totally comfortable with what we're doing right now. So you like pulling crankbaits, a lot of crankbaits, and it looks to me from the resume you sent me, you really like to use square bill crankbaits a lot.
Square bill crankbaits, I mean, they cover a lot of water at once, so it's easy to get going. You could cast in one spot and cast in completely another spot, and you've covered a large, massive amount of area.
I've had the opportunity to fish around and with some of the best in the world, and one of those is David Fritz. David Fritz is probably, in my opinion anyway, as humble as it is, David Fritz is the best crankbait fisherman I've ever seen, quite possibly in the top 10 in the world. David Fritz can do things with a crankbait that nobody else has ever done, and I've seen him clean house on it. So when you pick a tool like a crankbait, you're picking a lure that will certainly satisfy your needs if you're out there, especially tournament fishing.
Yeah. And also another one I like doing, I love jigs. I like flipping jigs. They're by far one of my most favorite thing to fish with. Like crankbaits, that strike you get, it's a pick up and run, and just when you lean into that hook set, it's another feeling.
It is. It's in a class of its own. When they load that rod, especially the deeper fish, the 15 to 20, 25 foot deep fish, you hit those things down there, and they'll bury your rod in your side. I mean, I love cranking. Cranking is power fishing, is what it is. And I love when those fish will let you power fish them. Oh, my goodness. I mean, yes, it is awesome. And big jigs, you start throwing, you can throw football jigs. What kind of jigs do you like to throw?
I like flipping jigs because I like dock fishing. I like pad fishing, like lily pads. I like trees, so I fish underneath trees a lot. Just those covered structures, which makes flipping jigs just, you can almost know that there's a fish there. It's just whether if you hit the fish on its bed or if you just nail it right in the face, and then, damn, it's crazy. It's just they take it and it's an instant.
Yeah, you're like my youngest son, Jason. I've got two boys. Both of them are very accomplished anglers, the tournament fishermen, and some of me rubbed off on them, and I'm thankful of that. But I've got one son that fishes shallow jig fishing, frog fishing, stuff like you're talking about, and then the other is a deep water pro,
Yeah. I like a little bit of everything. Keep my options open.
You like throwing Syncos too, I see.
Syncos are a lot of fun too. I mean, when they get slower in the summer, it's something that not everybody likes to throw because it's not that most exciting, but Syncos, you can root out a lot of fish in a little bit of time.
Do you spend a lot of time with the Syncos in the spring? We do, and boy, oh boy, we stick a lot of fish early in the season on the Syncos. Yeah.
On the beds.
Now, there's a number of ways to fish Syncos, and one of the...
Yeah, you got Texas rig, wacky rig.
Right, and you got one more.
Oh, yeah. You can almost fish it like a jig. You can put a bullet weight on it.
Yeah, you can bullet weight. You can center anchor it with a jig. There's just a ton of different techniques you can use. We've nailed them in the front to get the head down and the body flotation up, and then throw it with a weightless hook on it. That's a patience game. It's not one of those, you really do have to thread your way through your environment, but it's very successful. What's your favorite way of doing it?
I like wacky rigs. I feel like they have the most action when they're underneath the water.
Yep.
They give off the most action, so to get that reaction bite.
Yep, I agree with you. You're catching some fish now. How about the Ned rig? You doing much with those?
Yeah, no, most of the smallmouth I catch are off Ned rigs. But the one that I think I sent you when I was on the Columbia,
Yeah.
that one was off a swim bait.
Off a swim bait. So how are you rigging your bait with a Ned rig for smallmouth? Tell me a little bit about it. What's your target type terrain? What depth are we looking at? How are we rigging it? Let's get into the details of that net rig.
Okay, so I like my Ned rig with a mushroom head. A mushroom head, about, I think it's a 3/8 ounce mushroom head.
Yep.
And I like fishing shelves with my Ned rig where it's super shallow and then it just drops off to about 12, maybe almost 18 foot of water because, they're chasing the bait fish up onto the shelf.
Yep.
So when you drop it right off that shelf, it's instinct for them to just take it and run.
Yeah, you're putting it right in their mouth.
Yeah. That's what I like about Ned rig fishing is you can target those shelves.
We doing any special rigging on it? We doing anything different?
No, I'm just rigging it as normal. Actually, I rig it just all the way thread and through.
Yeah, well, the Ned rig, like you said, a lot of people uses a mushroom head jig. And I don't know if you know much about the origin of the mushroom head jig, but back here in Minnesota, way back in the mid-'70s, there was a fisherman
there was a guy named Ned.
Well, no, actually no. The mushroom head jig, Conrad Peterson, right here in Minnesota, was the first one that I ever remember seeing with a mushroom head jig. And this was back in 75, 76. It's a long time ago. And one of the things we did with that mushroom head jig is we would thread it on a worm, just a regular worm. And man, I'm telling you, you could slither your way through the coontail and through the cabbage with it. And you could do it in the wind. That was one of the beautiful things. You could do it in the wind. And we slapped a lot of fish as a result of that. Just a lot of them. But Connie Peterson was the first one. Now, I'm not saying Connie is the one that designed the mushroom head jig. I would not be surprised if he were the person who designed the mushroom head jig. But I'm telling you that, that's a killer lure, boy. It's a killer bait.
Yeah. What I like about it is the background story of how it got its name, the Ned rig, is there was a guy that actually, his name was Ned, and they just kind of named it after him. It was, I can't remember what the name was before it, but he was a tournament fisher, and yeah, that was his signature bait that he fished with.
Yep. Now, some of that is to do with the way he's rigging stuff and the soft plastics. If you look at the Ned rig, it has a lot to do with the components that go on that mushroom head jig. Not so much although he uses the mushroom head jig, it's how he's developed a technique around it, as I understand it, and I'm easily stood corrected, as many will tell you.
Yeah, like I think my favorite brand to go with a Ned rig is Z-Man, just because of it's almost like a rubber. It's super stretchy and it can take a beating.
I'll tell you a little story about super stretchy and it can take a beating. I owned a company called Odyssey Lures years ago, and we developed a very specific compound that was an amazing durable soft plastic that could be used in all of the soft plastics that we did. We took it to Strike King, and we sat down with Strike King. I was under contract with Strike King at the time. And we took it to them and said, guys, look at this. I mean, this is going to blow you away. You know what they told us?
What?
They weren't interested. And
That's crazy.
I looked at Doug Miner and I said, what do you mean you're not interested? He said, Bob, we're in the business of selling lures. What you're bringing us will last forever. And I said, well, Doug, that's the whole point. If a guy's in a tournament or he's out fun fishing, he doesn't want to sit there and replace it every time. Price it accordingly and put it in the marketplace. Look forward now. That was way back in the early 90s. Now look at today, and all that type of plastic is in the marketplace. We were so far ahead of that, it was unbelievable at Odyssey Lures. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about the industry. You said professional fishing, okay? Tournament fishing. But what other focuses do you have? How do you perceive yourself as getting to that level?
Well, how I would want to get to that level is by first, I know some buddies that just got a brand new boat, and they do tournament fishing, and I've asked around if I could be a co-angler.
Uh-huh.
Because that's how most people get started, is by co-angling with somebody else that has really done it.
Well, you learn a lot. You learn technique. You learn a lot. If you're asking the right questions in the boat, some anglers don't like to talk, but if you get one that likes to talk, you can pick the brain of a pro. That's pretty good.
Yeah, no. I have a guy, I fish with him pretty frequently. He's one of my best friends. His name's Joe. I fish with him so often, to the fact that he's taught me so many new techniques, so much new fishing, and I think this will be the year I'm going to start entering in competitions and paying for them.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try it. Try to get to it.
Well, I would throw some recommendations at you, if you don't mind, and I know you didn't ask for them, but I would throw some recommendations at you. Take all the knowledge you can get, because these folks, when you're in the company of them, they're good teachers. All you have to do is ask the right questions. Stay steady in school and learn science and biology. You need to learn that, because fishing isn't happenstance. It's something you need to learn how to repeat, and that's where science comes in. And pay close attention to those details in that science classes, because they'll be very helpful going forward. Take some economic classes, some marketing classes, because if you're going to be in the industry, you really need to know how to market yourself. And it's an ever-changing landscape. It's as fluid can be. But knowing as much as you can be a big advantage. A big advantage.
Yeah, we have a class that's called DECA, and it's a marketing group.
Cool.
How to market stuff, and I think that's one of the classes I might be taking this year in my high school.
Very good. Absolutely. You really need that. People don't realize that if you're a fisherman,
you got to sell yourself first.
You have to sell yourself. Exactly. No question about it. Some of that'll be the proof of the pudding, and some of that'll be just skills. So, but you have to do that. So, I'm really proud of you. 16 years old. When I put up your slate, I put you up as 17 years old. I hope you'll forgive me in that. You'll get there sooner or later. At least I didn't say 15. That's kind of nice.
Yeah.
Rodney, it's been my pleasure to have you on the show. Go catch us some big fish. Let us know as you're moving forward in your skill sets here, becoming more and more of a professional fisherman in the terms of fishing, even if it's on the co-angler side. Stay in touch, and let's see if we can get you back on going down the line. There's a lot to learn from young people. You will have a totally different perception of the sport than I had when I was going through it. No doubt about it.
Yeah. Do you mind if I add something, Bob?
Absolutely. Go for it. Yeah, this is your platform. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, recently I got sponsored by Lake House Lures, right?
Cool.
They're a jig company.
Cool.
A local jig company out of Washington, and the guy is really cool. He makes them all by himself. They're wire-tied skirts, so you don't have to worry about the falling of the skirts with the bands. I started working with him, and now I've developed my own promo code. It's Rodney15 for an additional 15% off all jigs on his store.
Cool. You gotta like that. Let's say that one more time, and let's let people know you have a promo code on this gentleman's store. So if people want to go there, they can order, and you get a discount, or you get a percentage of it.
I get an income for as many people that use that promo code. I get a little bit of money back.
That's how you do it. I mean, seriously, that's how you do it. Rodney, I appreciate you coming on the show, young man. Let's get you back on here in the future and have some more fun. What do you say?
I would love to. Thank you, Bob.
Catch them up some big ones for us. All righty?
I will.
We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Talk to you later.
Yeah.
Bye.
Folks, we'll be right back after these words. Hi everyone, Bob Mehsikomer here. Don't let your lack of success be the death of your fishing. Check out Grim Reaper Lures, spinnerbaits, and bucktails. Call them at 610-593-2492 or look them up on the internet at grimreaperlures.com. Hi everyone, Bob Mehsikomer here. Hey, got a question. What's the hottest thing in your boat during prime musky conditions? If you're like me, it's Grant Big Dog Rods. Talk to the big dog himself. Call him at 847-577-0848. Alrighty, we're going to call up our next guest right now. Let's see if we can get him on. Let's get him on and let's talk a little bit about what he's got to say about fishing. Rodney's is definitely a young man that's got his spirit and his head on straight.
Hello?
Have I got Michael?
Yes, you do, but is this Bob?
Hi, Michael. Bob Mehsikomer, 5 at 5. How are you doing? Mike McBride, folks.
Hey, I'm doing wonderful, Bob. Thanks for having me. How are you today?
Our pleasure. I'm doing just fine. You're down there where the big fish are. You're down there where you can get tugged on.
Oh, yeah. It's real easy to get caught up in all the big fish down here. So it gets addicting out here.
Tell us a little bit about where you're from, what you're doing, and let's catch up. I also want to talk about the veterans because I understand you're involved with the veterans. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a group of us. Our Instagram is Freshwater Veterans.
Okay.
And which started out as a group of local fishermen. We were all stationed together up in the East Bay. And we got together, and now our thing is we're trying to promote local veteran-owned and operated outdoor fishing and tackle companies. So we work with one bait that we like to promote that I really am a big fan of is Magnum Baits. They make custom smallers and maulers and different craw and drop shot stuff. So if there's anyone out there that is a veteran-owned and operated company or knows someone that would like us to promote their product and kind of put it out there, we would love to help you guys out, and we're always looking to go fishing. So
absolutely,
anyone out there, reach out to us, and we'd love to take you out.
Now, I did not, because I didn't have permission, I did not put your phone number up on your slate. So I've got your Freshwater lowercase veterans, which is your Instagram, and then I've got your email address. If you want to give them your phone number right now, we'll take that phone number. So if anybody wants to reach out to you, they can do that. The floor is yours if you want to do that.
You know what? If they want to reach out to me from email or Instagram, that would actually be preferable.
Yeah.
And then after that, we can reach out through contact on phone numbers, because I don't really answer my phone too often if I don't know who it is. And if I'm out on the water, I don't want to miss an important call from anyone. So if you guys want to reach out to me on Instagram or by email, please do so, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
Hence the reason we don't put it up unless we have permission. Some people like to, some people don't. You never know. But the bottom line is the other information's there. It's valuable. They can get a hold of you. Let's talk a little bit about the California Delta. What are we doing down there? And let's talk about some of these big fish you're catching. Holy smokes, Rocky.
Oh, yeah. The Delta is a really addictive place to go. And unfortunately, it's also one of those fishery that is very hit or miss. The tide out there on the Delta can either make or break you. So it's all about planning the tide and then the weather. A lot of Delta is extremely windy, so you have to find those wind-driven pockets. And one of my favorite things to do out on the California Delta is punching and flipping the hydrilla. There's thick hydrilla mats out there, and the bass love to hang out under those in the hot summer days. I know when I first got into it, I would hear a lot online about, punching the Delta, punching this, and yeah, okay, sure. I didn't want to go spend $300 on a rod or all this expensive equipment. So for any of you listeners who are curious about getting into it, the best way to start is just get a good frog rod. If you have a good 7.4 heavy frog rod, that's the first thing I use, and I put 65-pound braid on there. I use your typical punching hook. Some people use the EWG style hook. Both of them are fine. It's all user preference. When I use my punching style rig hook, I make sure to tie a snell knot on there, because when you can actually tie a snell knot, the hook will actually hook set for you. And when you press down pressure on the line, it'll actually come up. So when you're on all that thick mats and it's hard to get a good steady hook set, it'll actually do most of the work for you if you get a good backbone on your rod. So the first time I got into, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was going to say. So you went out and bought those expensive rods.
Well, now I did, because I'll tell you about the first time I went out there, and I had just got a decent frog rod. I'm not going to promote anyone's brand, because I'm a big advocate on getting what is comfortable and what's affordable. That's the most important thing, is just getting out there. And so I went out there and I had this 7.4 heavy frog rod, put some new line on it, 65-pound braid I started out with. I was like, all right, this is my typical frog rod. Started punching, boom, hit probably in the first half hour, set the hook, and I missed it. I was like, okay, well, new reel. I need to tighten my drag. I need to do this. Boom, missed another one. I was like, what am I doing? I started pulling. I missed 3 or 4 within like a 20-yard span. I was like, this is it. My reels broke, something's wrong. And I ended up calling my buddy, and I complained to him a little bit, and he was like, did you just put straight braid on there? And I was like, well, yeah. And he goes, you can't do that. And so it was my fault. I ended up putting some electrical tape on there first, because it doesn't allow the braid to suck in on itself, and it'll give you some tension on there so you can put a good hook set on it. Once I did that, I went back out on the Delta probably a week later, got everything tuned up, stuck a 9.5 pounder off of flipping in the thick hydrilla. I lost my mind. When I pulled it out, I saw its bucket mouth come out. It was one of those days where you should have been there yesterday. I was telling my buddy, we went out fishing this morning, stuck a 9.5 pounder there. The next fish was a 5. Another fish was a 3. The next one was a 7. I thought I had discovered the golden goose. So after that is when I went on, I did more research about what a good punching rod is, the sensitivity, kind of what I was looking for. And so now I use between a 7.9 extra heavy, and then I also switch with my extra heavy swim bait rod, which is a 7.11. And that's for when I'm pitching a little bit farther back into that. I want to have a good backbone so I can really control the fish's head so they can't dive down too far for me.
How does that rod differ from a flipping stick? Is there a noticeable difference between that and a flipping stick? Because I come from punching. I've heard of it. I know about it. Okay, there are people in Florida that'll punch through hydrilla and what have you, but we've always used just flipping sticks for that. So is what you're doing slightly different?
You know what? For the average person, I would say no. Like, if you're going out there, I would use a flipping stick. I carry a flipping stick with me too. It's a 7.5. It's a 7.5 medium heavy, or heavy, 7.5 heavy, and it works just as fine too. But with my flipping stick, I actually have 20-pound fluorocarbon on there.
Okay.
And so I use that for more when I punch. Punching for me is more emerged objects. So I'm punching through toolies and lily pads, things above the water, and I'm kind of getting through them. But you can also kind of punch and flip through the hydrilla, because depending on the tide at the Delta, you could have something that is above the water, and then when the tide changes, it's below the water. So that's when I can pull out a 20-pound fluorocarbon, and if I want to flip into that, I can also mix it up there.
So what are your favorite lures that you're using for this technique? What are some of the things that you're using? And this is the time to be specific. This is the time to start teaching this audience. Yeah.
Absolutely. So the hook is personal preference. I usually use about a 3/0 hook style. I feel like that works the best for me. You can go bigger if you want to go for larger baits or larger fish. For me, just like most fishing, it's really seasonal. So for the summertime and when it's warmer, I'll actually use one of those Havoc pit bosses. And then I match the hatch because it gives a good action on the way down. And so like today I was using Skeet Reese's Hot Craw, and it was performing well for me. I missed a couple, but that was on my fault, on my end. And then during the winter time and during the molting time, that's when I'll go a little darker color, the molt, put a little blue in it. And then winter I go dark and I go beaver style and those don't have as much action down, but for the wintertime, they don't move as much, so they're more lethargic. So I almost dead stick it when I drop it down in there.
They fall slower too. That's a bigger mass. They fall
absolutely.
Slower. Now nobody in California would ever know who Skeet Reese is. That's.
Oh, yeah, he's unheard of out here.
Yeah, nobody knows who Skeet Reese is. Nah.
Yeah. So, but another fun trick, and some people can do, or some people can choose to do it or not to do it. It depends on the cover that you're going into. At the Delta, I don't use anything less than 1 ounce. And then depending on how thick the coverage is, sometimes I'll bring it up to 2 ounces. But that's when it's really thick and the 1.5 ounce stuff can't get through it. Because at 1.5 ounces, you should be able to punch through most things. And then people actually, I use skirts. You can go get skirt blades that you could use on spinner baits or chatter baits, the replacement blades. And once you just slide them in between the hook and your weight, and you put the stopper up first, weight, and you can mix in a skirt in there. And I've actually found that putting a skirt on there has produced bigger fish in general than when I don't have a skirt on there. I'm not sure if there's some science behind it, if they like a little more action or flair on it, but for some reason I get that bigger bite on the skirt. And the skirt, I usually go more of a natural color for the skirt, but every once in a while, if like bluegill are really thick in the area or something, I might put a bluegill color on there and give it a little flash like a wounded bluegill when I'm twitching it above or below the hydrilla.
How deep is it beneath your hydrilla typically when you're doing this? Are we talking 2 foot, 3 foot, 5 foot, 10 foot? I know it varies, but what's your target?
Yeah. So my target is when I'm initially going for it, I'll pitch it in there and then I'll let it sink to the bottom, because that initial reaction bite is what I really want them to go for. If they don't go for that, I'll actually dead stick it for a second and see if they're interested, and then I'll kind of pull like an old runaway on them. Like I'll act like I'm a scared bait fish, and I'll bring it all the way up to the top just before it creeps through the lily pads or the hydrilla, and I'll kind of dangle it there, almost like a crawdad or a bait fish is trying to escape, but it can't get through, so it's struggling. I'll kind of let it dangle there, and then I'll bring it down like it's trying to catch some energy, and boom, pop it back up. And it's usually on the fall when you get a real big hit on that.
Just so you know, from somebody that I'm from the north, but I moved when I was 2 weeks old, came back when I was going into second grade. From the south, we call that doodle socking.
You call that what?
Doodle socking. When you pull it up off the bottom, maybe 6 inches below your mat, whatever, and you sit there and just tease them with it. Sit there and just come on, and I'll even drop it down maybe 1.5 feet, because if they're sitting there looking at it and all of a sudden it evades them by going down, they just hammer it. I mean, it'll be falling, and then boom, they just load the rod. Oh goodness, that's fun.
Yeah, there's no feeling like it when you just get a bass just blow up your line under all that.
Yeah, it really isn't. It's an amazing situation when it all comes together. So just remember that, doodle socking, and just remember Bob Mehsikomer in Minnesota taught you how to doodle sock.
Absolutely, you'll get 100% credit for that.
Yeah, they're gonna laugh you out of the state. But we do call it doodle socking. We really do.
I believe you. I'll actually Google it later, just so when they question me on it, I'll pull it up and I'll say, no, it's a real thing.
It's a real thing. We've done it many times. We fish mats up here. They're basically our grass, our cane, be it bulrushes or reeds that are growing up on top of soiled mats. And we've got a lake called Big Marine that for years, that was one of the ways you won tournaments. And you would pull in that lake, you'd pull a 4+ average to win the tournament. If you didn't have it, you're game over. And we don't have those big sleeper fish. You have the Florida strain. We're not blessed with those. So, but it's interesting that you talk about the skirt situation. I've got a friend of mine who is a good bass fisherman. I make a lure, a bucktail. It's actually a mirror. It's actually a mylar, weighted mylar skirt on one of our blade baits, and he's begging me to give him some of those so he can do the same thing you're talking about doing with those mylar skirts.
Oh yeah.
So it's
I love it.
Yeah, it's craziness. Hey, listen, you got anything else you want to tell us about that Delta, or are you going to keep it all to yourself?
You know what? The Delta is one of those things that I could tell you how to fish it, and until you get out there and really experience it, it's tough. I tell the viewer or the listeners that just like any place before you go, know the wind. The wind is huge. Fishing the tide is big out on the Delta. So yeah, just do your research before you go out there. Look at the bait fish, look at the spawn, see what's working for other anglers out there. And then don't be afraid to try something different. A lot of the times I go out there in these heavily fished areas that are real pressured, I like to mix it up a little bit and might use a different color that still might look the same and trigger the bite, but is not as everyday color that you would see the guy next to you using. So don't be afraid to go out and try something different. And anytime you get a chance to go fish the Delta, you got a great shot at catching a 10-pounder.
Wow, you got to go do it, don't you? Hey, is that pretty clear water in just a closing question? Is that pretty clear water you're dealing with mostly, or is it stained?
Yeah, in recent years, it's actually gotten a lot clearer. I think it's all the hydrilla is cleaning it out. You can find some murky pockets out there, and depending on the rain and the weather, but in general this year, it's actually been pretty clear in the areas I've been fishing around Bethel Island and Frank's Track.
Awesome. Hey, listen, it was a pleasure to have you on the show. I appreciate you coming on. Those veteran things sounds really great. I've got your information back up again so people can get a hold of you. It's right there. Again, Michael McBride, it's my pleasure. Good Lord, send us some more of those big fish pictures and let's stay in touch.
Hey, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
I appreciate it big time.
All right, you have a wonderful day. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
All righty, you bet. Have a good day.
All right.
Hey, folks. Yeah. Hey, folks, you know, what happens to me quite often, more often than you can imagine, is I'll be sitting there trying to watch TV or working on a project or something, and I'll get a phone call. And it's a very constant thing. People call and they ask you why or where or how or when, all those particular questions that should be answered if you want to have a successful trip. And I've been blessed. I've been able to travel around. I fished a lot of waters. My skill sets are slightly developed, so I pay attention to details that some might not. That being said, last night, 55 minutes on the phone with a person. He's a Canadian. He's not even a U.S. citizen. U.S. citizens can't go into Canada right now. But he's a Canadian. He lives a fair distance away from Lake of the Woods. He wants to go over and try it. But because he has such confidence in the water he's fishing, he doesn't quite know if that's something he should do. So he called me last night, and I spent 55 minutes on the phone with him. And when I got done with that conversation, I thought to myself, you know, he's not the only one. He's not the only one doing this. There's a lot of people with those same kind of questions, those same situations. So I went back into the archives, folks, and this is really the answer to the questions he asked last night. Muskie fishermen, pay attention. Well, everybody, I've got a gentleman on the phone that responded last week, had some questions about Sabascong Bay, and I thought we would bring him on. John, can you please pronounce your last name for me, please?
Sure, thanks. John Svobodny is my last name.
Boy, I'll tell you, I would have messed that up big time. So let's talk a little bit about the question that prompted this interview.
Sure. So just to give you a little background, and I really appreciate you turning my question into a segment on your show. I didn't expect that, but I really appreciate that. So I'll just give you a little background. So my cousin and I, we've been going up on the Canadian-Ontario opener for muskie for the last 3-4 years, and we've been going to the Indian Chain, which you're probably familiar with, a lake there called Canyon Lake. And we've had a lot of fun there, but you know, the size potential on those bodies of water is a little bit limited. You're not going to see, you know, a 50-inch fish. You know, the trophy on that lake is, you know, 42 to 44 inches. So we had a lot of fun, but you know, we through watching shows like yours and seeing those 50-inch class fish on bodies of water like Eagle Lake and Lake of the Woods, you know, we decided let's try Lake of the Woods this year for the opener. So not having never fished the lake, knowing nothing about it, I kind of blindly just booked a resort on Lake of the Woods, specifically in Sabascong Bay, thinking that, you know, at least gives us, you know, there's no guarantees in muskie fishing, but at least gives us the chance at that 50-inch fish that neither of us have caught. And what triggered my question to you is I talked to some of my other buddies about where we were specifically going on Lake of the Woods, which is Sabaskong Bay, and they had said, well, you kind of made the wrong choice there if you're looking for, the chance at a trophy. Sabaskong is kind of a numbers area of the lake, and, you're kind of going to be looking at, the same fish you saw kind of on the Indian chain where it's a lot of high 30s-inch fish, and, your odds of getting a 50-inch fish in that part of the lake are rather slim. So anyway, that's what triggered my question to you, having seen your video last week and seeing the big fish that you caught on Lake of the Woods, to see if that rumor is myth, or if there's any truth to certain parts of the Lake of the Woods being more numbers oriented versus size.
No, this is going to be a map study is what this is going to be, because your friends are totally wrong. The fish have been in the system forever. That means you've got mature fish throughout the entire system. The time of the year that you're going to Sabaskong Bay is absolutely perfect. The bottom end of the bay, if you will, is really a better fishery before, say, the 15th of July. After that, it starts to algae up and things change. But before that, you've got a great opportunity. The bottom end of the lake is receiving the warm water coming in from the Rainy River system that flows up through. Now, there's going to be a backwash coming out of the big bay as it comes across. And you've got an enormous amount of area in that system that's going to warm up very quickly, and it's going to have early vegetation. It's going to give you a great opportunity. Just like fishing muskies any place, finding the big fish is always going to be the mystery. You can travel around Lake of the Woods, and I have, from top to bottom, from east to west, and you will find not only days that you'll catch nothing but mediocre fish, but you'll find areas where you catch nothing but mediocre fish. But you're choosing to go there early in the season, and that's going to give you an extreme advantage. Let me find a couple of, I've got some maps here for you, so let's just, because this is going to be a mapping session. Where I want to take you guys to, or where I want to take you guys in terms of your group, is I want to get you over into Stevens and Stony. Okay, are you familiar with that area?
I am not.
All right, then when you get to Sabaskong Bay, we used to put in all the time at Morrison Marina, at Gills Morrison Marina. So you would come out of the marina. Here, let me go back to the last map that I had. This is, like I said, we're going to walk through this. We would be putting, it's off the map. It would be off of this area here. See where I'm marking it here?
Yep.
Okay, it would be off of that, and you would be coming up into the lake from the Morrison Marina, Sabaskong Bay proper, if you will, and you're going to be going east. And as you go east, you're going to be going into two different particular bays which are of importance to you. One is Stevens, and the other is Stony Portage. Those are the two bays where the spawning's going on. What people don't understand with muskies, or maybe they do, and maybe they're just not talking about it, is to find big fish, you have to find spawning habitat. That's going to sound odd, but they're social creatures, so they develop societies in basic areas. The average home range, ice in to ice out, for a muskie in the Shield is 8 square miles. So if you can find areas that give you, like we have right here, all this blue area that we're looking at right here, all that blue area, let me move this up. We're going to be difficult. We're going to play with this a little bit. All this blue area that I'm marking right here, this is spawning habitat. If we go up east of that, and we start looking at the actual back end of the bay, this is spawning habitat back here. All of this is spawning habitat. And when we get down into Stony, which we'll go to in a second, we have the same situation. Anytime you see that blue mapping on the Canadian Shield map, then you're going to be looking at potential spawning areas. If the fish spawn back in these areas, and they're spawning when the water temps are really cool, the first thing they're going to do when they leave these areas is they're going to migrate out. They're going to migrate out to the first set of little islands and reef structures that they can find. On this particular map, looking at this, I can see this is a very key spot. Here's another very key spot. These are areas where you're going to gun and run. You're going to hit them quickly and you're going to be out of there. You're not going to spend a lot of time. You won't need to spend a lot of time. You'll just hit them and you'll move on. If we go down into Stony, Stony's going to give us actually a better makeup. Stony's got a lot more of that type of structure. It doesn't have as much spawning habitat. This is spawning habitat down here, and this is spawning habitat back here. But the most important thing with this is these fish move out. Classic spot here, and look at this reef. I guarantee you that in the early part of the season, in the first 2 weeks, 3 weeks of the season, you're going to find what you're looking for right through here. You don't have to move very far, and you can find it again here. You don't have to move very far again, and you can find it here and here. What you've got is a migration. These fish have spawned back here, and they're migrating their way out to the basin. So every one of those spots that we've marked there are potential big fish spots. Again, the first thing you're going to find early in the season are going to be the middle-aged fish, the 38 to 42, 44-inch fish. Those are going to be the first fish that rebound after the water starts to warm up. The big females are going to drop off. They're not going anywhere. They're going to stay in that shallows for a bit. When that water starts to warm up into that 66, 67, 70 degrees, you're still early in the season because this shallow end of the lake is going to warm up pretty fast. Then those fish start to move out quickly.
So, is it traditional when you fish early in the season? There is it traditional smaller baits, twitch baits, things like that, or were you using bigger bucktails, or kind of what was your tactic early season in that area?
I've answered that question kind of tongue-in-cheek many times, and I answer it basically by saying I never downsize. And the reason I don't downsize is because the fish I'm looking for is eating big. Even that time of the year, that fish I'm looking for is eating large food. So that being said, I spend more time with a big blade than probably most do. But I will literally, by doing so, I will sort through a bunch of fish, pass them up if you will, because they're not going to respond to my lure. The big blades stay slower, and that's key for you to remember. In the spring, the waters are cool. Even though the fish can still burst, it doesn't expel that energy very quickly or very easily, and those big throbbing blades can sometimes be effective. Now, let's stop for just a second. Let's look this over for a second. Let's say that you're there, and you're not fishing a typical, cold in the morning, a little bit of warmth in the afternoon, cold in the evening, the typical early season pattern. Let's say you get on that warm bite. Everything's really warm. I will be the first to take out our custom-made 8 blades and get on them, because I'm starting to pick up fish on an instinctive strike as opposed to a feeding fish. So if I've got water temperatures warming up, the metabolism's warming up, the fish is starting to engage, and all of a sudden I come zipping by with one of these number 8s, these super blades, then I can get that fish to respond. I can at least get her to come to the boat and come in on a figure 8. But typically I'm going to be using my bigger blades. I stay with them as a common rule. Now, that said, don't overlook topwater. Topwater is deadly, especially in Stevens and Stony, because those early vegetations, and I'm talking they come up fast, really fast in those areas, and that topwater will run over the top of those submerged weed beds, and you'll be amazed at what kind of fish can come out of there. Fact is, depending on when you're there, you might even have to fight some surface vegetation already. But those two areas are going to be very good for either big blades, warmer conditions, go to your faster blades, get that fish to engage, or go to that topwater. Now, in the cooler conditions, where again, I don't have the classic warming trend, I have typical spring conditions, then I'm walking my baits. I'm throwing an attack dog or I'm throwing a jackpot, but I'm walking the bait. I can cover an awful lot of real estate with a bait that makes an awful lot of agitation and doesn't have to come back to the boat fast. Very much like what I'm doing with my big blade baits, I'm slowing things down. That said, again, let's say that we get that warming trend, we get that really nice peak, it starts to happen, I'm taking out props. I'm going to a Majorca and I'm going to call these fish out of the weed beds or around the reefs, and of course most often it's going to be the last part of the day. It's going to be after that warming trend has really taken advantage. You've got the rocks warming up, the vegetation themselves are warming up, and all these fish are starting to engage.
Well, this is really helpful. You're making me feel a little better about my investment there, Bob, and my decision, because I was a little concerned I had made a big mistake. So,
well,
this makes me feel better.
Just remember this, Stabascong Bay is a big body of water. It's a huge body of water, and there's a lot of variables that you're going to have to deal with in this system. If I go back to the map itself of Stabascong, let's go back to the map here real quick so you can understand how big Stabascong Bay is. Stabascong Bay is a very large body of water. The northern rim too, let me see if I've got it for you. Let's see here, the blueberry that's round. I might not have it. Let me see if I've got it. I thought I put it on here for you because the north rim, north channel, if you're familiar where the Turtle Portage is, this is what used to be the portage, okay? We used to be able to go through that with boats years and years ago. This section right here, for some reason, is pure magic. I honestly can't tell you why, except maybe those fish are still responding to the old current days and stuff, but it is an excellent place. Furthermore, if you don't find them right here, all you need to do is move into this island cluster. Move right down into these island clusters and start looking at these areas in here. This is, again, it's not extremely deep, it's not extremely exposed water, and anything that's moving out of here in terms of water temperature is going to start radiating into the basin itself. So consequently, depending on what if you don't find them back in here or back in here, then you want to start looking at this stuff. Get out here, work work down in the island clusters. And there's another spot I will show you real quickly. It was one of my key spots a long time ago. This is off of Blueberry Island. See, this is a round island?
Yep.
This right here, early in the season, has produced really well for me. This right here and right here. All of that.
Just kind of looking for the traditional, vegetation and rock together. I mean, is that
close to spawning grounds? Close to spawning grounds. That's the key. You want to stay relative to areas off this map. Right down below us here is a large spawning ground that the fish use. So this is the first cluster that they engage when they come out into the system. And there's a ton of fish. This is a week. This is a week of fishing in here. If you're really in there chowing that apart, that's a week's worth of fishing. How many guys are going in your group?
Just myself and my cousin. I'll be just two in the boat. So.
Just two in the boat. Oh, you guys are going to have fun then, because if you get on something, you don't have to share it with anybody.
Yeah.
I'm serious about that.
Is there a lot of boat traffic in that area, or is it a big enough area to where you're not going to be jumping spots and running into a lot of boats on the open?
You're not going to have to bump shoulders, okay? But there are going to be other anglers that are going to be in that area. There's no question about it. Depending on the spring and how people are booking their vacations, the economies are just starting to come back right now. So I don't know if a lot of people have disposable income to go spend on a Canadian trip, but Stabascong Bay is a pretty popular place early in the year. There's going to be some fishermen there. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. All right. Well, Bob, you've answered all my questions, and I really appreciate you taking the time to give us this education. Too bad we can't have you in the boat. I think if you were in the boat with us, we might have a better shot at catching something, but we're just going to have to do it on our own, I guess.
Oh, make my head explode. I don't.
Thanks again.
I don't know if I would be any different than anybody else. Just go up there and chug lures and have fun. That's what it's all about. You guys will do well. And do me a favor, send us some pictures when you get back.